Eve sat alone in her small apartment, surrounded by the echoes of a marriage that had crumpled under the weight of unfulfilled dreams. At 26, she had faced the harsh reality of infertility, a bitter pill to swallow in the early years of wedded bliss. The longing for a child had torn at the fabric of her marriage until it frayed beyond repair. "Maybe we rushed into this," Eve whispered to herself, tracing the edge of a faded wedding photo on the wall. The image captured a fleeting moment of joy, now overshadowed by the pain of a relationship that had unraveled too quickly. Her ex-husband's words haunted her memory. "I can't be with someone who can't give me the family I want," he had said, callously severing the ties that had bound them together. Eve couldn't shake the feeling of inadequacy that clung to her like a relentless shadow. Despite the heartbreak, a flicker of hope still glowed within her. Motherhood remained an unfulfilled dream, a desire that seemed to transcend the ruins of her first marriage. Eve found solace in the idea that someday she might find a love that embraced her completely, flaws and all. One evening, as she wandered through a local bookstore, her gaze fell upon a shelf of parenting books. The covers promised guidance and wisdom, igniting a spark of determination within her. Eve yearned for the opportunity to mend the broken fragments of her dreams and build a family on a foundation stronger than the one that had crumbled before. As she leafed through the pages of a book titled The Journey to Motherhood, a kind-faced stranger approached. "Hopeful, are we?" he asked with a gentle smile. The stranger, named Sarah, shared snippets of her own journey through infertility and the joy she had eventually found in adoption. In that conversation, Eve felt a glimmer of possibility. Sarah's words resonated, offering a lifeline to someone who had felt adrift in a sea of shattered expectations. It was in that moment that Eve's resolve solidified. She would not let broken beginnings define the rest of her story. She would embark on a new chapter, determined to find the love and family she so desperately craved. In the wake of her broken marriage, Eve cautiously navigated the unpredictable waters of singlehood. She had resolved to heal and rebuild, never expecting that love would find its way back into her life so unexpectedly. Eve's routine became a symphony of work, solitude, and occasional outings with friends. One ordinary day, at the local cafe where she sought refuge in the comforting aroma of coffee, her eyes met those of a man across the room. Frank, with his disarming smile and an air of confidence, seemed to radiate a warmth that reached out to her. Their eyes lingered for a moment, a silent acknowledgement of an unspoken connection. Emboldened by the encounter, Frank approached her table. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, a casual charm accompanying his words. Eve, surprised yet intrigued, gestured for him to take a seat. As they exchanged pleasantries, Frank revealed glimpses of a life marked by adventure and success. He was a man from a different world, one that seemed to hold promises of happiness and excitement. "I couldn't help but notice you seemed lost in thought," Frank remarked, his eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Care to share what's on your mind?" Eve, usually reserved, found herself opening up to this stranger. She spoke of broken dreams, past heartaches, and the quiet yearning for a family that lingered within her. Frank listened intently, his genuine interest shining through. "Well, Eve," he said with a genuine smile, "life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. Sometimes the unexpected can lead to the most beautiful moments." In the weeks that followed, Eve and Frank's connection deepened. They explored the city together, shared stories of their pasts, and laughed in a way that felt like the birth of something new. Frank's presence offered a respite from the shadows of Eve's previous marriage, and for the first time in years, she felt a sense of hope. As their friendship blossomed into something more, Frank admitted, "I never believed in love at first sight until I met you. There's something special about the way you see the world." Caught off guard by the sincerity in his eyes, Eve hesitated before responding, "I never expected to find love again, but maybe unexpected is exactly what I need." Little did Eve know that this unexpected encounter would lead her down a path she never anticipated, where love and the promise of a family would intertwine in ways she could have never foreseen. Eve and Frank's connection deepened, their lives weaving together in unexpected ways. As their bond flourished, so did the surprise growing within Eve, the unmistakable signs of a new life. The revelation unfolded against the backdrop of a sun-kissed afternoon in the park, where Frank took Eve for a leisurely stroll. Underneath the dappled shade of trees, with a soft breeze carrying the promise of change, Frank turned to Eve with a glint of excitement in his eyes. "You know, Eve," he began, "I've been thinking a lot about us and the future." Eve, caught off guard by the sudden intensity of the conversation, looked at Frank with a mix of curiosity and anticipation. "What do you mean?" she asked, her heart quickening. With a gentle smile, Frank took a deep breath before continuing, "I want to be there for you and this baby. Eve, will you marry me?" The question hung in the air, a breathtaking moment frozen in time. Eve, her eyes widening in surprise, struggled to find words. The park seemed to hold its breath, waiting for her response. "Frank, I never expected this," she finally managed, her voice filled with a mix of gratitude and uncertainty. "But marriage? Are you sure? What about your intentions?" Frank's expression remained earnest. "Eve, I've never been more sure about anything in my life. I want to be the father to our child, to build a life together. And as for my past, well, I believe in second chances. Don't you?" Eve's mind raced, conflicted between the scars of her previous marriage and the genuine love she saw in Frank's eyes. "I never thought I'd hear those words again," she admitted, a hint of vulnerability breaking through. "But I want a family, a stable home for this baby." Frank took her hand, his touch grounding her in the present. "Then let's make that happen together. I love you, Eve, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this work." As Eve grappled with her emotions, the weight of the decision hung in the air. The unexpected proposal marked a crossroads in their journey, a leap of faith into an uncertain but hopeful future. The decision made under the rustling leaves of the park set the stage for Eve and Frank's union. As they exchanged vows in an intimate ceremony surrounded by nature's embrace, the fragility of their newfound happiness lingered beneath the surface. In the early days of their marriage, Eve reveled in the joy of impending motherhood and the promise of a family with Frank. The scent of fresh paint lingered in the air as they transformed a spare room into a nursery filled with dreams. Yet, beneath the surface, a familiar unease simmered. One evening, as they shared a quiet dinner, Frank's phone buzzed incessantly on the table. The tension in the room escalated with each unanswered call. Eve, her voice laced with concern, finally spoke up. "Frank, who's calling you so late?" Frank, avoiding eye contact, mumbled, "Just work stuff, nothing important." The exchange left an unsettling residue in the air, a foreshadowing of the challenges that lay ahead. As days turned into weeks, Eve noticed the subtle signs: late nights at the office, hushed conversations, and a distance growing between them. One night, unable to contain her growing unease, Eve confronted Frank. "What's going on, Frank? We're supposed to be building a life together, but it feels like you're slipping away." Frank, his eyes betraying a hint of guilt, sighed. Eve, it's not as simple as it seems. I have responsibilities, pressures. This is just a phase, it'll pass. But the cracks in their once solid foundation deepened. Eve, grappling with the fear of repeating history, fought to salvage their fragile union. I can't go through this again, Frank. I need you to be present. For us, she pleaded. His response, however, revealed the fractures beneath the surface. This is who I am, Eve. I can't promise I'll change. You knew what you were getting into. As the reality of their situation sank in, Eve faced a heart-wrenching dilemma. The dream of a stable family hung in the balance, tethered by the unraveling threads of a relationship teetering on the edge. In the midst of their struggles, a voice echoed in Eve's mind, a haunting reminder of her past decisions and the fragile nature of the union she had entered. The once promised stability felt like sand slipping through her fingers, leaving her to grapple with the question of whether love could mend what seemed irreparably broken. As the fragile union between Eve and Frank continued to unravel, Chapter 5 unfolded against a backdrop of mounting tension and unspoken resentments. The echoes of late-night arguments and distant silences filled the spaces between them, casting shadows on the dreams they had once shared. One evening, after another heated exchange, Eve found herself standing alone in the dimly lit living room. The weight of unspoken frustrations pressed down on her shoulders as she whispered to herself, "I can't keep living like this." The breaking point had arrived, and Eve knew that the time for hard choices had come. The next day, over a cup of coffee in the barren quiet of their home, she looked into Frank's eyes and said, "We can't keep pretending everything is okay. I need more from this marriage, for our child's sake." Frank, wearing an expression caught between resignation and defiance, replied, "You knew what you were signing up for, Eve. I can't be the person you want me to be." The words hung in the air, a stark acknowledgement of the irreconcilable differences that had festered beneath the surface. Eve, desperate for change, questioned, "Is this the life we want for our child? To grow up in a home where the air is thick with resentment?" Their dialogue became a battleground of unmet expectations and the harsh reality of a marriage hanging by a thread. The emotional toll of their struggles etched lines on Eve's face as she confronted the painful truth that history might repeat itself. "I thought we could build something different," she confessed, her voice tinged with sadness. "But it's clear we're stuck in a cycle. I can't go through this again." Frank, sensing the inevitability of their situation, sighed deeply. "Maybe we were too hasty, thinking we could rewrite the script. But I can't change who I am, Eve." With those words, the fragile hope that had sustained them began to crumble. As Eve stood up, wiping away tears, she uttered the words that marked the beginning of the end. "I can't keep sacrificing my own happiness for the sake of a marriage that's already broken." The breaking point, though painful, became the catalyst for a decision that would alter the course of Eve's life. The next steps were uncertain, but one thing was clear: the fragility of their union had reached a tipping point, demanding a resolution that would shape the chapters yet to be written. In the aftermath of the breaking point, Eve's life took an unexpected turn as fate delivered a blow that would change everything. One evening, the phone rang with news that Frank had been involved in a sudden and tragic accident. Eve rushed to the hospital, a torrent of conflicting emotions coursing through her veins. In the sterile waiting room, surrounded by the antiseptic scent of disinfectant, she was met with the gravity of the situation. A doctor approached her, his expression conveying the weight of the words he was about to speak. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Thompson. Your husband didn't make it." The words echoed in the sterile space, shattering the fragile semblance of normalcy that had lingered in their strained marriage. Eve felt a maelstrom of emotions, shock, grief, guilt, all colliding within her. As she struggled to absorb the news, the hospital room became a hub of voices. Frank's parents, their faces etched with grief, looked to Eve with accusing eyes. What happened? Why didn't you stop him from going out that night? Frank's mother demanded, her anguish transforming into blame. Eve, still reeling from the sudden loss, stammered, I didn't know. We were going through a difficult time, but I never expected. He was our only son, and now he's gone. Do you realize what you've done? Frank's father added, his grief manifesting as anger. Eve, grappling with her own sorrow and the weight of their accusations, found herself on the defensive. I didn't want this. I didn't wish for any of this pain. We were struggling, yes, but I never wanted him to. Her words were cut off by Frank's mother, who spat, You're responsible for this. You ruined his life. As the accusatory words hung in the air, Eve's heart shattered. The sudden tragedy had not only stolen away any chance for reconciliation, but had also thrust her into a role she hadn't anticipated, the scapegoat for a grief-stricken family searching for someone to blame. In the midst of their grief, Eve found herself excluded from the mourning process. The funeral became a painful ordeal as accusatory glances and harsh words followed her. She clung to her grief in solitude, unable to mourn openly for the man whose departure left a trail of unresolved emotions. As she navigated the funeral's somber rituals, Eve couldn't shake the haunting question. What if the breaking point had come too late, leaving a tangle of regrets and unspoken words in its wake? The sudden tragedy had become an unexpected climax, pushing her into a vortex of grief and guilt that would shape the chapters yet to unfold. In the aftermath of Frank's sudden tragedy, Chapter 7 unfolded as Eve grappled with the weight of grief, guilt, and the strained relationships that surrounded her. The air in her once shared home hung heavy with memories as she faced the daunting task of untangling the threads of their complicated past. A few weeks after the funeral, Eve received a call from Frank's parents. Their voices, laden with grief and accusation, seeped through the phone. You took our son away from us, Frank's mother accused, her words laced with bitterness. Eve, still mourning and burdened by guilt, attempted to defend herself. I didn't take him away. I loved him, and I never wanted any of this to happen. Her words fell on deaf ears as Frank's father interrupted. We don't want you here. Leave our son's house and never come back. You're not welcome. The demand, harsh and unforgiving, became the catalyst for Eve's decision to sever ties. In the following days, she faced the painful process of packing her belongings, each item carrying the weight of memories both beautiful and painful. As she closed the door to their shared home for the last time, Eve felt a sense of liberation mingled with the ache of loss. The decision to sever ties extended beyond just the physical space. Eve, with the guidance of her brother, initiated the legal process of untangling the complex web of shared assets and responsibilities. The echoes of their strained marriage reverberated in the cold formality of legal documents and the chilly glares exchanged during negotiations. One evening, as they sat across from each other in a lawyer's office, Frank's parents made their intentions clear. We want nothing to do with you. You're not part of our family, and you never will be. Frank's mother spat, her eyes filled with lingering resentment. Eve, her voice steady despite the emotional turmoil, replied, I never wanted to be a source of pain for anyone. All I wanted was a family, a chance at happiness. Frank's father, unmoved, retorted, "Well, you got what you wanted. Our son is gone, and now you're free to live the life you ruined." The harsh words, a final assault on Eve's already wounded heart, solidified her resolve to sever ties completely. The legal proceedings concluded, marking the official end of a chapter that had promised love but delivered heartache. As she walked away from the lawyer's office, the weight of severed ties bore down on Eve's shoulders. The echoes of the past lingered, but with each step, she moved closer to a future free from the accusing glares and the burden of a union that had crumbled long before tragedy struck. In the wake of severed ties, Eve found herself embroiled in legal battles that would determine the course of her newfound independence. The chapter unfolded against the backdrop of courtrooms, paperwork, and the cold formality of legal proceedings. As Eve navigated the complexities of dividing shared assets and untangling financial responsibilities, the tension between her and Frank's parents escalated. Legal consultations became battlegrounds where accusations and grievances were hurled like weapons. One day, during a particularly contentious meeting, Frank's mother confronted Eve with venomous words. "You think you deserve anything from our son's estate. You ruined his life, and now you want to take what's rightfully ours." Eve, her eyes tired but determined, replied, "I never wanted any of this. I loved your son, and I never wanted to be the cause of pain. But I won't let myself be scapegoated for the problems that existed in our marriage." The legal battles, though emotionally draining, became Eve's pathway to liberation. With the support of her lawyer and the unwavering determination of her brother, she fought for a fair share of Frank's estate, not out of greed, but as a means to secure her daughter's future. In another courtroom confrontation, Frank's father, frustration evident in his voice, argued, "You have no right to any of this. Our son's legacy should not be tainted by your presence." Eve, her voice firm, asserted, "I loved him, and I bear the weight of his loss every day. But I won't let my daughter's future be dictated by resentment and blame. We deserve a chance at a better life." The legal battles served as a crucible for Eve, testing her resilience and determination. As each document was signed and each agreement reached, she felt a growing sense of liberation. The shackles of a strained marriage were slowly loosening, and the promise of a fresh start beckoned on the horizon. Throughout the legal proceedings, Eve's lawyer served as a beacon of support, providing not only legal counsel but also a source of encouragement. "You're doing the right thing," the lawyer assured her. "This is about securing a future for yourself and your daughter." With each legal victory, Eve moved one step closer to the liberation she sought. The battles may have been arduous, but they became the stepping stones toward a life free from the shadows of the past. As she emerged from the courtroom, head held high, Eve felt the first whispers of a new beginning, a chance to redefine her story on her own terms. The legal battles concluded, and Chapter 9 dawned as a testament to Eve's resilience and the pursuit of a fresh start. Liberation, both emotional and financial, marked the threshold of a chapter that promised hope, self-discovery, and the possibility of a brighter future. As Eve stood in the doorway of her newly acquired home, a mix of emotions flooded her. The space, devoid of haunting memories, represented a blank canvas on which she could paint the next chapters of her life. The walls echoed with the promise of a new beginning, a chance to rewrite the narrative that had been marred by heartache and loss. The process of rebuilding extended beyond the physical realm. Eve, guided by the unwavering support of her brother and a network of friends, embarked on a journey of self-discovery. The wounds of the past, though not forgotten, served as reminders of the strength she had found within herself. In the quiet moments of solitude, Eve reflected on the tumultuous journey that had brought her to this point. A newfound sense of empowerment fueled her determination to create a stable and loving environment for her daughter, Lily. The prospect of a brighter future for both of them became the driving force behind every decision she made. One evening, as she unpacked boxes in her new home, Eve received a call from Sarah, the kind-faced stranger she had met at the bookstore during her darkest days. "Eve, I heard about everything you've been through. I wanted to check in and see how you're doing." Grateful for the unexpected support, Eve replied, "It's been a roller coaster, but I'm taking it one day at a time. This new beginning feels like a chance to redefine my life." Sarah's voice carried warmth and understanding. "You're stronger than you realize, Eve. Embrace this new chapter, and remember, you have the power to shape your own story." In the weeks that followed, Eve immersed herself in creating a nurturing home for Lily. Their laughter echoed through the halls, replacing the echoes of past arguments. The newfound stability allowed Eve to focus on her own growth, pursuing hobbies and interests that had long been set aside. One day, as she shared a quiet moment with Lily in their backyard, her brother approached, a proud smile on his face. "You've come a long way, Eve. This new beginning suits you." Eve, reflecting on the journey, replied, "It's been challenging, but I've learned that strength comes from facing adversity. This new beginning is not just about me. It's about creating a better life for Lily." As Chapter 9 unfolded, Eve embraced the possibilities of a fresh start. The scars of the past were woven into the fabric of her story, a testament to the resilience that had carried her through the storm. The horizon stretched before her, a canvas waiting to be painted with the colors of hope, healing, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow.